Are you ever just so tired? I'm so tired. I remember one time when I was in my 20s, I decided that I was going to have fun for a whole night instead of sleep. And I was like, it'll be fine. I'll just take a lot of caffeine the next day. I'll just pound the caffeine. And so that's what I did. And then it gave me a panic attack. And so that was a really fun life lesson. And I haven't ever messed with it ever since. I don't care if it's Bill Murray's annual royal party and I'm the guest of honor. If it's past 7 o'clock, I'm not leaving my house. But enough about that. I'm going to tell you the story about Donnah Winger. And this is a but wait, there's more story. So just hold on, okay? Just hang on, hear me out, listen to this story. Mark and Donnah Winger. They were a married couple. They were pretty opposite of one another. Donnah was really outgoing. Mark was more soft-spoken. It was the whole opposites attract type situation. Donnah was an OR tech and Mark was a nuclear engineer. He's very smart. They got married in 1989, and as their marriage went on, they learned that Donnah couldn't have any kids. And this was devastating to them because they really, really, really wanted to be parents. Instead of being sad and letting it ruin their lives, they chose to fill up their lives with other things. They were really heavily involved in their Jewish community. They had a lot of friends and family, and they just found happiness and fulfillment in that. But after a few years of marriage, they got some really, really good news that was going to change their lives. There was this teenager at the hospital where Donnah worked, and she just had a baby, and she was putting her up for adoption. And so Donnah and Mark jumped at the opportunity to adopt this baby. So on June 1st of 1995, Donnah and Mark became the adoptive parents of this little baby, and they named her Bailey, and she just seemed to fit right in. Like she was always meant to be theirs, and they're a happy little family. Mark and Donnah lived in Springfield, Illinois, and Donnah took Bailey the month after she was adopted to go meet her family in Florida. So her dad, her mom, her stepdad, some siblings, and she was just going to stay for a few days. And so she went, and they had a grand old time. And then they got back on the plane and they headed home, and all went well. The flight went well. They got home. But the airport was a 2-hour drive away from where they lived. And so in order for Donnah to be able to tend to her new baby and be a mom, her parents hired a private driver for her so that she could just focus on taking care of her baby and not have to worry about road tripping with this newborn. So Donnah gets off the plane with the baby. She goes to get her luggage and she steps out onto the curb of the airport waiting for this driver. She spotted him quickly. He's waving at her, waving her down. So Donnah goes to greet him. He loads up her luggage for her. She gets in the car, gets Bailey all settled in, and they set off for this 2-hour drive back to Illinois, or back to Springfield. The driver's name was Roger Harrington, and it became clear to Donnah fairly quickly that he was of the chatty variety. And Donnah's got this newborn, and she just got off the plane. She's been traveling. She's tired. She's really not in the mood for chatting. And so she's trying to give him the hint, by just giving short responses to his questions. But Roger is not picking up what she's putting down. He is not reading the situation, and he just keeps talking and talking and talking. Instead of shutting up, Roger's comments and questions took a sharp right turn into Creepyville, and Donnah was uncomfy. He was flirting with her. He was telling her that he liked her tan, her brand new tan that she got in Florida. And he was just talking about things that made Donnah feel uncomfortable. He was like, I like older women. I don't even know how old this man was, maybe in his 20s. And he invited her to one of his sex parties. So to shut him down and up, she was like, hey, listen, I'm tired. I've got this baby here. I'm a new mom. We've been traveling. I just want to chill. Can we just be quiet? Thanks. But Roger just kept on going. and going and going. And it wasn't just small talk. He kept going with the inappropriate things, and Donna was just uncomfortable. So she's just sitting like, what's she gonna do? You know, she's got this new little baby. She's in the back of this guy's car being driven by him. And so she's just praying that the ride goes quickly. They can get home. She can get home safe, and they'll be done with it. But that's not what happened. This ride went from uncomfortable to terrifying because Roger started driving really fast. He was driving really erratically, and he started telling Donna all about the voice in his head named Dom. And Dom told him to do bad things, and most recently was telling him to hurt people. And so Donna's stuck there with her baby, and she's just praying, please, please let this man just get us home and leave us alone. And after the terrifying rest of this ride, Donna sees the red brick house where she lives in view coming on up. And she's like, oh, we're home. Thank you. Roger pulls up to the house, and Donna hurries out of the car. She's like unbuckling her baby and just hurrying, right? Because it's been one hell of a ride. She went and she took Bailey inside before she went back out to get her luggage. She hurries inside, locks the door, checks through the peephole to make sure that Roger's gone. And she is kind of relieved because she's like, that was a ride. And that was scary, and I don't ever want to do that again. Mark, who was in the basement doing his little treadmill workout, came upstairs to greet Donna and their baby, and he sees that Donna's distressed, and he's like, what's wrong? What's going on? Why do you look like this? What's wrong? What's wrong? So she tells him all about this guy and how creepy he was and the comments he was making. And she's like, it's fine though. We're home safe. It's not a big deal. But Mark was pissed off now. You know, that's his lady. That's his daughter. Ain't nobody's going to talk to them like that. And this was the 90s, so there's no Uber. There's no ratings. You can't go to Yelp to complain and get stuff off your chest and vent, right? So Mark's like, Donna, you need to go and write down an account of what happened with this guy so that you can remember all the details in case we decide to report Roger to the company. Let's put a think on it, but write it down anyway, just in case. So she's like, okay, fine. And she writes down everything that happened. And then they're able to just kind of push the whole thing out of their minds, move on with their day, enjoy each other's company, and go on with life. Donna's on maternity leave. So she stays home with the baby the next day while Mark goes off to work. And things are fine. Everything's normal. Like her nerves had settled from the day before. She's not really worried about this Roger dude. But then that night, they get a call. And Mark answers, and nobody's there. Like, whoever was there hung up after a few seconds. And so they're like, whatever. It must have been a wrong call or something. But then the phone rings again, and it's the same situation. Mark answers, nobody's there. Nobody says anything. And then they hang up. So they're like, oh my gosh, this has to be Roger. Why is he calling us? And so now they feel like this guy's stalking them. And this is really putting Donna on edge because she thought this whole thing was done and over. Like, this guy's a stranger. He was making weird, inappropriate comments. And now he is calling their house. And she has to be home alone with the baby. Like, she's got to protect her baby. You know, her husband has to go to work. It's just kind of creepy and unsettling. And she doesn't feel safe anymore. So they go to bed that night. And the next morning, they're like, you know what? We should complain to the company, to Roger's company, because he's obviously harassing us, and this isn't cool. Mark calls BART, which is the company that Roger works for, and he does complain, and he's like, this is what happened. He made my wife feel uncomfortable, put her and my baby in danger, and now he's making these calls to my house, and we just are uncomfortable, and we feel like he should be reprimanded at the very least. And the company took this very seriously, and they did end up giving Roger a 6-month suspension, but nothing changed. Mark and Donna were still getting these weird hang-up calls throughout the whole week. And Mark was getting mad. He was positive at this point that it was Roger. He's mad that they made a complaint, and so now he's just trying to make their lives hell. And so Mark is like, well, I'm going to take this in my own hands then. That'll show him. After Donna's ride with Roger, he'd given her some paperwork. I'm sure there's like a business card or whatever on there. And his phone number, I don't know. Somehow Mark got a hold of Roger and he called him and he threatened him. He said that if he didn't stop harassing them, he was going to call the police. And he hangs up the phone and they're like, all right, now we wait. Let's see what happens next. That afternoon, after the call, Mark was down in the basement working on his physical on the treadmill, and he hears a thumping sound coming from upstairs. So he turns off that treadmill and he goes to investigate because he is the man of this house. He walked upstairs, he went to into the master bedroom, and he saw that Bailey, the baby, was laying in the middle of the bed, but Donnah wasn't in there. And Mark was like, that's weird. Something's off. Donnah would never leave Bailey in here by herself. She would never put Bailey in a position to hurt herself, like leaving her unattended to roll right off the bed. While he was still in that room processing the fact that Donnah was not in there with Bailey, he heard another thump come from the other side of the house. So he hurried and he put some pillows around Bailey so that she wouldn't fall off the bed. And he went over to his nightstand and he pulled out a pistol that he keeps there inside the drawer. And he quietly walked out of his bedroom. He was living his James Bond dreams. Quietly walked out of the bedroom and he made his way down the hall into the dining room to see what the heck this thumping sound was coming from. In the dining room, he found Donnah on her knees, and behind her was a man he didn't recognize, beating her with a hammer. So he said, pow, pow, twice into this guy's head, and then he ran over to Donnah and rolled her over to see if she was even breathing at this point. As he was tending to Donnah, the attacker started to move. He wasn't dead. So Mark picked up the hammer and he smashed this guy right in the chest as hard as he could. Then Mark turned his attention back to Donnah, but she wasn't responsive. So he grabbed the phone and he called 911 and told them all about what had just happened. He walked into the dining room. Some guy was beating his wife with a hammer, so he shot him. Police and medics showed up and the scene was so gruesome. There's blood everywhere. There's Donnah, who's unresponsive. There's this guy who Mark shot and hit in the chest with a hammer, and Mark is sobbing over Donna's body. Donnah and her attacker were both rushed to the hospital, but neither of them ended up making it. They died once they got to the hospital, like within the hour of getting to the hospital. While Mark was talking to the police, he was sobbing, he snot everywhere, and he's trying to tell them what happened and what he thinks is going on. And it occurs to him that the attacker had to have been Roger Harrington, Donna's driver. Police found the attacker's wallet on the scene and they confirmed that Mark was right. It was Roger Harrington. And the police were familiar with Roger. One of the detectives in all of this, his name was Detective Cox. And he rented a trailer to Roger and his wife, and he knew Roger to be a volatile person. And so this kind of, it made sense that Roger would do something like this because of his volatile past. But why Donnah? Roger didn't have a criminal past, but he had been a psychiatric patient. And one of the cops had actually responded to a call from him over some domestic dispute between him and his wife at one point before. So Detective Cox's theory is that this was retaliation because Mark called the company and complained to them about Roger, and he didn't lose his job, but he was on suspension for 6 months, and so he was out of work. And so he thought he just showed up at their house in a blind rage and retaliated this way. So now this family is torn apart. Donnah is dead. Mark is a single dad to this new little baby Bailey. So Donna's family in Florida would take turns flying out to Springfield to be with Mark, to help with the baby, just while he was trying to figure out what he was going to do, put his life back together, and try to find kind of his new normal without Donnah. And Donna's family is obviously dealing with immense grief too, but they wanted to be there for Mark. Mark was coping by drinking heavily, and one of Donna's family members recommended or suggested to him that he get a nanny to help him so that he could balance work and home life while he was trying to figure this all out when they were not available to help him since they lived in Florida. And Mark liked this idea. He thought that that would actually be really helpful. So he put an ad out and searched for a nanny. A girl named Rebecca Simic responded to the ad. She was a recent college graduate. It's 1996 now. And once she heard the story of what happened, she just couldn't even believe what this tiny little baby, who's 3 months now, Bailey, had been through. And she wanted to step in and help as much as she could to kind of try to repair their lives and aid in getting things back on track as best as they could. And so Mark hired her, and Mark ended up in a relationship with the nanny. 4 months after he hired Rebecca, she found out that she was pregnant and he was the daddy. And Mark knew that he was going to have to tell Donna's mom at some point. So he called her and told her about what was going on. He's in this relationship with Rebecca, and now she's pregnant. And Donna's mom was kind of heartbroken. I mean, it all happened so fast, but she was also happy in a way because she knew that Rebecca had been good for Mark, and she wanted to see him happy. And this was just a whirlwind of a relationship, because at the end of that year, 1996, Mark and Rebecca went to Hawaii and eloped. And this was kind of the beginning of the end of Mark's relationship with Donna's family, because after he married Rebecca, he kind of slowly started to drift away from them a little bit. He left his Jewish faith, which him and Donnah were a part of. He converted to Christianity. Mark and Rebecca moved to the country into a bigger house, and over the next 4 years, they had 3 more kids together. So he's really just kind of starting this whole new family, which is fine. Like, when you lose somebody, you should try to move on with your life, right? You're stuck here, so you might as well. But Mark still wasn't moved on from Donna's death as much as he had moved on with his life. Donna's case itself was closed within 48 hours, but Mark would still go into the police station occasionally and just ask for answers. He just wanted answers. He would ask if there were any new developments. He just wanted to know why. Like, what was Roger's motive? Roger was dead, obviously, but it almost wasn't enough for Mark. He just wanted to know why. He just wanted somebody to be held responsible. So this led him to filing a lawsuit against BART, which was that transportation company that Roger worked for. He claimed that the company should have known that Roger was dangerous. And so BART is like, oh. And so with potentially millions of dollars on the line, BART launched their own investigation into Donna's death. And for a while, there was nothing new uncovered. There was no new anything. And so the lawsuit just kind of sat there for a while. But there was one detective who was on Donna's case who felt like something was off from the beginning. He felt like the case wasn't closed properly. He kind of had this gut feeling like something's not right here. I think they missed something. 3.5 years after Donna's death in February of 1999, this detective who had a little bit of a gut feeling got a call from a lady named Deanne Schultz with a tip, and she claimed that there was somebody else involved in Donna's death. Who was it, Deanne? This tip ended up leading the detective to review the evidence in Donna's case. And in reviewing it, I mean, he really went through it with a fine-tooth comb because he found a discrepancy. Yeah, that's right, a discrepancy. Back on that day in 1995 when Donnah was killed, Donnah and Roger, police had taken a succession of photos. There were 3 pictures taken before anything was touched or moved. And then they were put into the case file and pretty much forgotten about. But between the tip that came from Deanne and the photos and Bart's investigation, there was new evidence that was found, and Donna's case was reopened. It took them 2 years of reopening this case, going through evidence, going through new evidence and old evidence, for them to learn that what Deanne claimed was true. There was somebody else involved in Donna's death. Back on the day that Donna died, Mark was down in the basement running on his treadmill, and he heard a thumping sound. He did. He heard a thumping sound. But it was an expected thumping sound because it was somebody knocking at the door. So he stops his treadmill and he goes upstairs to answer the door. And who should be standing there but old Roger Harrington himself? Mark invited Roger inside, told him to make himself at home. So Roger walks through the house and he goes over to the dining room table and he sets his things down. And when he turns around, Mark is standing there with a pistol in his face. And Roger's in shock, obviously. There's a gun in his face. And Mark orders him to get down on the floor on his knees. And so he does, doing as he's told. And Mark raised the pistol to Roger's head and pulled the trigger. And just like that, Roger was dead. Donna had been in the master bedroom with the baby, but when she heard this gunshot, she was obviously freaked out. So she ran downstairs to see what was going on. And when she saw her very own husband holding a gun, standing over a man who was lying on the floor with blood pooled around him, she started to panic and cry and shake and hyperventilate and all the things that you would probably do in that situation. She was in such shock and just trying to take in the whole situation and process it all that she never even realized that Mark snuck up behind her, hammer in hand, and started hitting her with it. He hit her head over and over, and she's screaming at him like, "What are you doing? Oh my gosh, you're my husband. We have a family. Why are you hitting me?" He's hitting her. He's taking her out. He hit her at least 7 times before she fell onto the ground. And Mark composed himself after Donna's unconscious. You know, he's got to put on his best shooketh voice. And he calls 911 to report that his wife had been hurt. But while he was on the phone with the dispatcher, Roger started to groan. He wasn't dead. So Mark was like, "Hey, I have to go. My baby's crying." And he hangs up the phone and he walks right over to Roger and shoots him one more time in the head. And he knew that his fingerprints were going to be all over that hammer. And so he had to cover his tracks. So he took the hammer and he hit Roger in the chest with it so that it would fit his narrative that he's telling police. Then he rearranged Donna and Roger's bodies in a way that would correlate with the story that he was going to tell police. And for a while there, Mark got away with murder. But those 3 photos that had been taken that didn't seem like much, those were the things that ended up screwing Mark over and getting him caught. When crime scenes are being gone through, they are gone through meticulously. Like every single thing is taken into account if they're doing their job right. And the picture showed that Roger was laying at an angle that wouldn't have been possible if he had been attacking Donna when he was shot. And that lady, Deanne Schultz, who called in with that tip years later, she told police that it was Mark, that he was the one who killed Donna and Roger. And so, who was Deanne and how did she know this? Well, Deanne was Donna's best friend, but she was a crap friend. She was more of a frenemy, if you know what I mean. She and Mark had started an affair while Donna was still alive and married to him. Like it was this gross infatuation. They gave each other rings and they're like, "Oh, I love you so much. We're going to be together forever." And Mark got the idea in his head that things would just be so much better if Donna just died. Divorce? What's that? That's not an option. But murder is. So Mark wants Donna dead, right? And so when she comes home from Florida and tells him about this Roger Harrington guy and how he was pervy and creepy and saying weird, inappropriate things to her, He looked at that as an opportunity to kill Donnah and frame Roger. He started to weave this web of lies that started with calling Bart to complain about Roger. And as far as the hang-up calls go, Mark was always the only one to answer the phone, so those were likely fake. It was just a whole elaborate story of lies, web of lies. In order to get Roger over to the house, Mark called him and he said, "Hey, buddy, why don't you come over? We can sort this thing out. I know your job suspended you." And Roger is like, "Okay, yeah, that would be great. Actually, I really, really need this job." And so that's how he lured him into his trap. And Deanne, where did she fall in all this? Well, when Mark would talk to her about how much better life would be if Donnah was dead, they could be together, they could run away, she didn't really think much of it. She just thought this was a guy who's venting, maybe making some dark jokes here. She never took it seriously. And so when she heard that Donnah died, she knew it was Mark. Mark manipulated Deanne into believing that if he went down, she would go down too. And so that's why she stayed quiet for 3 or however many years. But eventually, Mark and Deanne broke up. The infatuation died out. And Deanne was left with this very heavy information. And it was so bad and it weighed so heavily on her that she started struggling with severe depression and even attempted suicide several times. So she finally made the decision to go to the police with this information 4 years later after the fact. And in exchange for her testimony, she received immunity. Between Deanne's tip and testimony, the crime scene photos, and Bart's own investigation that they launched, Mark ended up being arrested for the murder of his wife Donnah and Roger Harrington. Poor Roger. He's just trying to be a perv in peace. Ended up getting him killed. Let that be a lesson. And Rebecca. Oh, Rebecca. What about Rebecca? She's got 3 kids with this dude. Or 4. 4 kids? Yeah, she's got like 4 kids with this dude. She had no idea that the guy she had married had all these secrets and that he was a cold-blooded murderer. No idea. After a 3-week trial, Mark was found guilty of the first-degree murder of his wife Donnah and Roger Harrington on June 5th of 2002. He was sentenced to life without parole, and after his conviction, Rebecca divorced him and she took their kids and she went to go live in Louisville, Kentucky. The end. Poor Donnah. She didn't deserve that. Thank you for being here. If you want more stories from me, you can subscribe to my channel. You can turn on notifications. And until I see you again, take care of yourself and have a great week.